I don't need to be a daughter who is seen as a failure. My family left me behind the day I graduated from middle school. When I got home, the house was completely empty. After some time, I finally reached my mom on the phone. She, along with my dad and sister Evelyn, just laughed at how I reacted. It turns out they decided to move to Washington without me because Evelyn got accepted by a modeling agency. Evelyn is going to be the top model in the country, but what about me, Mary? What am I going to be? I have only one leg. Does that mean I'm worthless? I was in despair for a while, but being abandoned by my family gave me freedom. One day, I'll make them regret leaving me behind. My name is Mary Jackson, and I'm 27 years old now. I live with my grandparents on my dad's side.
Here you go, Grandpa.
I fixed the button on your shirt, I said. Thanks, Mary. You're really good at sewing. I can't even thread a needle anymore, Grandpa replied. It's okay. You can leave everything to me, I said, smiling. My grandparents always say how dependable I am, but fixing a shirt button is easy. I want them to rely on me for everything because they mean the world to me. They are the ones who saved me when my parents didn't care. My earliest memory is feeling strange about not having a leg. I lost my left leg below the knee when I was 4. I barely remember it, but the pain and the injections still give me shivers. What hurt more than the physical pain was being left alone in the hospital. Mom didn't come today either. Will she come tomorrow? I would ask the nurse, and she would give me a weak smile. She'll surely come on Friday, the nurse would say, trying to comfort me. But Friday never came, and my mom never showed up. The kind nurse's comforting words just made me feel worse as a child. Most kids my age were always running around and full of energy, but I had to live a quieter life for a while. Still, by the time I started elementary school, I was walking normally again with a prosthetic leg. I sometimes had to sit out during gym class, but I could climb stairs and run a little. It didn't affect my daily life much. I wasn't treated differently at school, and I had friends. I loved being at school. I wished I could stay there forever, because it was my escape. I didn't feel like I belonged at home. I tried on my new dress and asked, "How do I look?"
Cute.
My sister Evelyn, who's 3 years older than me, twirled around in her frilly skirt. It spread out like a flower. "Evelyn, you're so cute, just like a model," my mom said, showering her with praise. My dad took pictures of her from all different angles. Evelyn lifted her chin like she was used to all the attention. Evelyn looks good in anything. I want to buy her lots of clothes. Maybe she'll be a model one day. Look how long her legs are, my mom said, putting her hands on her cheeks and swaying. My dad nodded eagerly. They were completely obsessed with Evelyn. At 15 years old, I was the only one who felt out of place at home. Yeah, I do have long legs, don't I? I think they're longer than my friends, Evelyn said proudly. Yes, Evelyn's legs are the longest, my mom said. It's a shame how quickly you grow out of your cute clothes. Evelyn put her finger to her lips and smiled. Normally, clothes that Evelyn outgrew would be passed down to me, but I wasn't treated the same. Mary isn't normal though, my mom said, her voice changing. They were so excited about Evelyn, but then they'd look at me with pity. Was there some family rule to put me down at least once a day? By the time I turned 15, I accepted it. But when I was younger, it made me sad and angry. Evelyn always wore pretty skirts like a doll, while I was stuck in baggy pants. My gray or black sweatpants looked like pajamas no matter what. And to make it worse, my tops were always t-shirts with hoodies. I want to wear a cute skirt too, I told my mom one day. She looked at me shocked. What? That's not going to happen. Your leg isn't normal. You can't show it off. Wouldn't you be embarrassed if people saw it? I'm not embarrassed. All my friends know about my leg, I replied. Well, it embarrasses me, so stop asking, she said coldly. If you can't wear skirts, at least let me wear cool jeans, I begged. Jeans? The fabric is too tough. It would be hard for you to wear. I buy you soft pants because I care about you. Can't you see that? And besides, jeans are expensive, she explained. But you buy so many clothes for Evelyn, I pointed out. I bought you a leg, didn't I? My mom said. I'm spending money on something no one else needs, and you still want more clothes for Evelyn? A leg for you. Does that sound strange? Hey, does that sound strange? Under the pressure, I shook my head. My mom muttered more complaints. Your leg was expensive, you know. I'm paying for something you shouldn't even need, giving you a luxury, and yet you still want more. You're such a greedy child. Don't make things harder for your mother. The next day, Evelyn came home from the mall with our dad, carrying new clothes and showing off in front of the mirror. Meanwhile, I was stuck wearing the same plain sweatpants, whether I was sleeping or going out. I always wanted to dress up, and that didn't change, even when I reached middle school. In fact, I was looking forward to wearing my school uniform, but instead, I ended up going to school in my regular sweatpants. It seemed my mom had spoken to the school, claiming she was worried about me. My kind mom managed to make me look like a helpless child. When uniforms were required, I had to wear boy pants. It was convenient that the boy next door, Kyle, had just graduated, so I got his hand-me-downs. Whether it was because the uniform was available or because my mom wanted to hide my leg, I couldn't figure out her reasons. By this point, I wasn't even sad anymore. I just thought, oh, so this is how it is. As if it didn't matter. Evelyn's dream of becoming a model grew stronger. She would post pictures online with captions like "Sweets and me" or "Blue sky and me," then smirk at how many likes she got. She often made me take her photos, handing me her phone like I was her servant. I'd be in trouble if I refused, so I eventually stopped saying no. But Evelyn was very picky, making me retake the photos over and over, which was exhausting. This one looks good. The angle from below makes my legs look super long. This is perfect, she'd say, then suddenly shout. Wait, hold on. No way, Mary. You're in the reflection of the window. Evelyn immediately deleted all the photos. That was close. It would be a disaster if people knew I had a sister like you. You showing up in my photo is so inconsiderate. You're not supposed to be seen by anyone. Think about your place, she scolded. After helping her with the photos, that's how she treated me. I didn't have the energy to argue back anymore. I just took in all her insults, knowing I wasn't needed in that house. I always felt like I was just in the way. I knew that all too well, so I tried to avoid causing any problems for my parents or Evelyn and lived like I was invisible. But never in my wildest dreams did I think they would abandon me right after I graduated from middle school. When I got home after the graduation ceremony, the house was a mess. Clothes and random things like a spatula were scattered on the floor, but the TV, refrigerator, and Evelyn's mirror were gone. It looked like no one had ever lived there. Mom, are you here? I called out. She had come to the graduation ceremony, but it felt like she was just going through the motions. I was the only one there whose parents didn't show any real interest. I thought maybe she had other things to do, but when I left the house that morning, she had just been lying in bed, so it was clear my graduation didn't matter to her. The strange state of the house sent a chill down my spine. I didn't care about the empty rooms. I only cared about whether my mom was okay. Could something have happened to her? A burglary, maybe? My mind jumped to the worst possibilities. Even though my mom didn't care much about me, I was worried about her. I searched the whole house, bedroom, bathroom, balcony, but she wasn't there. I tried calling her phone, but it didn't connect. Then I called my dad, but all I got was his voicemail. I started panicking, calling my mom over and over again. Finally, the ringing stopped, and I heard my mom's voice, though she sounded irritated. I was so relieved, I almost cried. Mom, you finally answered. I'm so glad you're okay. Are you alright? Huh, she replied, confused. I quickly explained what I saw when I came home, and then, out of nowhere, she started laughing. What are you even talking about? There was no burglar, she said. How do you know that? I asked. Of course, we know because we moved out. What? I hadn't realized it until then, but the noise in the background sounded busy, like they were somewhere else. I could hear Evelyn and my dad laughing, too. Hey, Mom, what's Mary saying? Evelyn asked. She's panicking, thinking there was a break-in. Mom answered, still laughing.
See?
I told you we should have left a note. Poor Mary. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mom, Evelyn, and my dad were all cheerful, like it was just another day. Hey, Mary, we're moving to Washington. Do you know why? My mom asked. I didn't answer because I had no idea. Guess what? I'm going to become a model, Evelyn announced. She had passed an audition for a modeling agency, and my family, excluding me, decided to move to Washington. Mary just graduated from middle school, so she'll be fine on her own, right? My mom continued. We could have moved earlier, but we waited until today for your sake. You get that we were being kind, don't you? They took care of me until I finished middle school, but now they were leaving me behind without a second thought. I wanted to go to school, but I had to figure out the money by myself. Finding a job at that moment seemed impossible. My mom taunted me with a cheerful voice. Well, try to figure it out on your own. I was frozen, still holding the phone to my ear, when she delivered the final blow. Evelyn is going to be the #1 model in the USA, and Mary, what will you become? We don't need a failed daughter. Then she hung up. It felt horrible, impossible. I wanted to scream, help me, don't leave me. I thought about calling her back to beg, but I stopped myself. She wouldn't listen anyway. I was just 15, fresh out of middle school, and now I had to live on my own. Could my teachers help me if I asked? No, that would only bother them. Then I thought of my grandparents. They lived in the same city, but I hadn't seen them in 15 years. My mom always spoke badly about them, calling them terrible people who made her life hard. I wasn't sure if they would even take me in, but they were the only family I had left. Still wearing my middle school uniform, with a flower pin for my graduation, I took the bus to my grandparents' house, barely remembering what they looked like. When I arrived, my grandma opened the door. Mary, is that you? You've grown so much. I've missed you, she said with tears in her eyes, hugging me tightly. I had prepared myself to meet mean people, but all the tension left my body, and I started crying. Emotions I didn't even realize I had came pouring out as I collapsed at the entrance. I told my grandparents everything, sobbing uncontrollably. My grandma's face was full of sadness, not knowing what to say, while my grandpa gently patted my shoulder. It's okay. You don't need to worry, he said softly. They weren't the bad people I had imagined. In that moment, I was saved by them, the only ones who cared. Mary, you're not a failure. You're just a normal girl. Don't be afraid, live the way you want to, they told me. Since that day, I've been living with my grandparents. They've never told me no whenever I ask them for advice. They always say, give it a try. For the first time, I wore a knee-length skirt that fluttered as I walked. Mary, you look lovely. It suits you, my grandma said with a smile. I felt a mix of shyness and joy. That was the first time I realized how much happiness wearing clothes I liked could bring me. My grandparents accepted me no matter what. When I dyed my hair blonde, my grandpa just smiled and said, it looks good on you. When I bought pants with holes in the knees, my grandma worried and added little patches to cover them. I secretly cried because I had saved up for my part-time job to buy a sewing machine. But on Christmas morning, I woke up to find a high-end sewing machine next to my pillow. I was so surprised that Santa Claus came for me at my age. These are some of my most precious memories. Living without restrictions, I went on to attend fashion school after graduating from high school. While I was still in school, I launched my own brand. I designed the cute skirts and cool denim pants I had always dreamed of. My designs focus not only on style, but also on inclusivity clothes that anyone can wear comfortably, regardless of age, health, or physical limitations. Now, at 27, my work is going well, and I feel like I'm living a fulfilling life. But everything suddenly changed when I heard a familiar voice. Mary, long time no see, my mother said, arms open as if waiting for a hug. She was standing in front of my company. I stepped back, but she quickly moved closer. My father was also there, scratching his head and smiling awkwardly. Wow, Mary, I didn't think you'd make it this far. This is your company, right? That's amazing. I always knew you'd become someone great. It had been 15 years since my family abandoned me. I wasn't expecting a heartwarming reunion. The reason they were here now was obvious. Recently, I was interviewed on TV about my company. The focus was on my products, but my parents were more interested in the fact that I was the CEO. Really amazing, Mary. I saw you on TV and immediately looked up everything about you. Your company's sales are $800 million. Does that mean you're a billionaire now? Wow, I'm so proud of you, my mother said excitedly, grabbing my hand. We've moved back from Washington. Let's live together again, she added, narrowing her eyes as if she were being kind. But despite the warmth she tried to show, I felt nothing but chills. I tilted my head slightly and said, "Excuse me, but I don't have a mother."
What?
"Mary?" she asked, looking shocked. Trying not to sound too serious, I smiled and replied, 15 years ago, my family, my mother, father, and sister abandoned me. So, I don't have a mother. Over the years, when friends or others asked about my family, I always smiled and acted like everything was fine. If I told the truth that my family left me on the day of my middle school graduation, people would just feel sorry for me. So I never let anyone know the full story. "I don't care about the past," I said calmly. "Are you still angry, Mary? Holding a grudge over something that happened 15 years ago?" My mother asked, trying to laugh it off. "You're surprisingly vindictive." I kept my polite smile. "It's been 15 years. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't care about people who don't matter to me." My mother's face twitched, and her eyes widened. It's funny how, when you become successful or get rich, suddenly more relatives appear. Like flies swarming around money, they need to be dealt with. Looking at the woman in front of me, I couldn't even be sure she was really my mother. After 15 years, she looked so different from the woman in my memories. "Come on, Mary. We're family. We have a bond that can't be broken," she said, rolling her eyes before grabbing my hand again. "I can't say much about family because my memory of it has faded. But you're not my mother," I replied, still calm. Her grip on my hand tightened, but I didn't flinch. "My mother isn't an old woman with wrinkles like you," I added, not breaking my expression. Her hand jerked away, and she quickly covered her face. My sister had gone to Washington to become a model, and I remember my mother always taking care of her looks, obsessed with skincare. Even though 15 years had passed, a woman in her 60s shouldn't look like this. "No offense, but aren't you in your 80s? I asked. She let out a small cry, her face twisting as more wrinkles deepened. The sight was like something out of a fairy tale, like a wicked old woman. Even though I was treating her like a stranger, part of me knew she still had traces of the mother I once knew. But it was true, she looked much older than she should. Her face was covered in wrinkles, and her cheeks sagged like a bulldog's. Her hair was streaked with gray, dry, and frizzy. She wasn't just thin. She looked starved. The fingers that had gripped my hand earlier felt like dried-up twigs. "You ungrateful child," she snapped. "After everything I did for you, giving birth to you, raising you, and this is how you repay me? I am your mother. Shouldn't a daughter show some respect?" She lunged at me, her desperation clear. It was obvious she was struggling in life. "Respect?" I asked quietly, watching her carefully. Her lips twisted into a smile. "You're a CEO now, right? It's only natural for you to support your family," she said. "Yes, I'll support my important family," I replied, easily shaking off her frail hand. "But my family only includes my grandparents." "What?" she gasped. "The rest of my family abandoned me," I said, walking away. "I have no obligation to help you, right?" I said calmly. "But you have money. Don't be mean." "I'm not asking for your whole fortune, just about $30,000, my mother pleaded, clinging to me desperately. Her tone softened as she tried to get through to me, her eyes filling with tears. "Look, Mary, I'm in trouble. Life in Washington is tough with the high cost of living. I've had to borrow some money. Can't you help me? We're family, aren't we?" she begged, tears streaming down her face. But the sight of an old woman pleading didn't touch my heart. I was getting tired of dealing with her when I saw 3 figures approaching behind her. My mother turned around, and her face twisted in annoyance. "What do you want now?" she spat, glaring at my grandparents. "Is it wrong for a mother to visit her daughter?" she asked, trying to defend herself. "Yes, it is," my grandpa replied sharply, without hesitation. "You've got some nerve showing up after abandoning your daughter. You said she was no longer needed, right? You threw her away like trash, and now you're begging that same trash for help. How pathetic. Mind your own business, my mother snapped. Grandpa smirked. The trash you threw away turned out to be a diamond, didn't it? How ironic. My mother bit her lip as Grandpa's words stung. She had always painted my grandparents as the villains, but after living with them for 15 years, I knew they were nothing like she had said. Even though Grandpa was angry now, he never spoke ill of my parents, even after they abandoned me. Trying to ease the tension, my grandma spoke gently. We've heard that you've been going to relatives, asking for money. Are you struggling financially? My mother's face flushed with embarrassment. She pressed her lips together and muttered, Yes, that's right. I have no money. Then, as if something snapped inside her, she shouted, I have no money. And it's all because of Evelyn. Hatred flashed across her face as she spoke about the daughter she once adored. We spoiled her. But for what? Nothing. All for nothing. She just spends money on clothes and makeup, never landing any modeling jobs. She's useless. My mother's frustration boiled over as she stomped her foot, her behavior shocking me. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. Suddenly, something large burst out from behind a tree, and for a second, I thought it was a wild animal. My heart nearly stopped, but then I realized it was Evelyn. Hold on, Mom, Evelyn yelled, storming over. I won't stand by and let you insult me like this. I'm cute. I'm more beautiful than anyone, Evelyn said, her voice full of the same confidence she had 15 years ago. But the truth was, she had no job, and all she did was spend money without contributing anything. That's because people don't appreciate my charm, she shot back, then added, and don't lie, Mom. I've done some modeling jobs before. Evelyn wasn't completely wrong. Even though I had moved on with my life, I couldn't help but check her social media from time to time. Her posts were full of glamorous photos, which only made me feel worse every time I looked. But I couldn't stop, even though it added to my misery. Then I noticed something strange. Her posts had almost no likes or comments. She only had 5 followers, which was fewer than my own old, forgotten account. The few comments she did have felt kind of mean, and when I checked out those accounts, it became clear they were making fun of her. No experience, but she acts like a pro. Spends hours demanding reshoots because the photos don't capture her charm. No wonder she doesn't get modeling jobs. Who would want to work with her? One comment read, What do they know? What's wrong with being picky when I'm a professional? Evelyn snapped, clearly frustrated. But the truth was, she wasn't getting any modeling jobs, and it was obvious why. I looked closely at her now. Her face was overly bright, her eyes seemed too large, her lips too pink, and her chin too pointed. The Evelyn standing in front of me looked nothing like the person on her social media. It was all built on lies and fake appearances. I'm different from those other models, she said proudly. I don't need surgery or fake compliments. I'm a real model. I don't suck up to people for jobs like those other girls. I'd rather stay out of that ridiculous world. Despite being disowned by our mother, Evelyn's confidence was still strong. In a strange way, I kind of admired her for it. Who would have thought that Mary would become a CEO of an apparel brand? Maybe you want me to be your model, huh? Is that it? She asked, smiling confidently. I don't usually work with family, but if you insist, I might just consider it. Her positive attitude was probably because our parents spoiled her so much. She was the complete opposite of me. I had always been the one looking down, unsure of myself. I wasn't sure if I envied her or not. You as our model? Well, it depends on the terms, I replied. I might even sign an exclusive contract. Oh, really? She said, perking up. But there's one thing, I continued. Our brand values a natural vibe. We showcase people as they really are, without edits. So it might be difficult for you. What? Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. I've seen your Instagram, I said. The you on there and the real you, they're completely different. Modeling without edits. Are you serious? Evelyn gasped. Her eyes opened so wide that her fake eyelashes fell off, and the makeup on her face started cracking, like porcelain. I'm not going to give you money or use you as a model. You abandoned me, so please leave me alone, I said clearly, then turned my back on them. Evelyn muttered in a trembling voice. Who do you think you are? I already knew they would show up. Evelyn had posted about it on social media, claiming, I'll be the exclusive model for some company, and when I go back to my hometown, everyone keeps looking at me. Can they tell I'm a model just by my aura? Her posts were so embarrassing to read, but they were helpful for keeping track of what they were up to. Knowing my parents might visit, I was prepared and ready to handle it without getting upset. As I was leaving with my grandparents, my father, who had been silent like he wasn't even there, suddenly stepped forward with a grin. Mary, I didn't do anything bad to you. I was just a victim, scared of your strong-willed mother and Evelyn. I've always been worried about you deep down. That counts, right? His words caught me off guard, and I hesitated for a moment. Then he turned to my grandparents, apologizing seriously. Dad, Mom, thank you for taking care of Mary. She's my precious daughter, and you've protected her. But from now on, I'll be the one supporting her. My grandparents looked surprised. But before anyone could respond, my mother shouted in anger. You might as well have not been there at all. So just stay quiet. She was right. Her words snapped me back to reality. Aren't you also to blame for doing nothing, Dad? What? No, that's not fair. It was Evelyn and your mother who were hostile. Don't lump me in with them, he protested, trying to win me over. His attempt to act innocent was disgusting. I realized I felt nothing toward him. He was just someone whose presence or absence didn't matter. He wasn't needed in my life. Don't start acting like a father now. Mary doesn't need you, my grandpa said, voicing exactly what I was feeling. Looking embarrassed, my father tried to fade back into the background, a role he had always played well. But my mother, still hopeful, reached out to me weakly. Her older appearance made her look pitiful, a tactic she likely used to gain sympathy. Mary, I'm really sorry.
It was all my fault.
You've always lived without complaining, being such a good and admirable child. I thought you didn't need my help because you seemed so strong, she said softly, her words filled with regret. I realize now the truly precious daughter wasn't Evelyn, it was you, my mother said, her tearful eyes fixed on me. Evelyn might have passed the audition for the modeling agency, but instead of making money, she ended up paying them for entry fees and lessons. Could she have been tricked? My mother wondered aloud. Your father even quit his job to move to Washington to support her, but there were prettier girls everywhere. Evelyn becoming a model was never really possible. As I stayed silent, my mother kept talking. But you, Mary, you're a CEO. How wonderful. You're my daughter, and I'm so proud. The more she praised me, the colder I felt. But wasn't I the daughter you didn't need? I asked. Oh, did I say something like that? She said, pretending she didn't remember. Before she could continue, my grandpa cut in. It's rich for you to say that, considering you're the one who caused Mary to lose her leg, he said. My mother flinched.
What?
That was an accident. I confused the gas pedal with the brake, she said defensively. I didn't mean to. I drove into Mary while she was playing in the yard. It was a miracle she survived. That was decades ago. Why bring it up now? You've blamed me enough for that. Are you still trying to torment me? She snapped, showing no remorse. Even after all these years, she still wouldn't admit fault. It wasn't about me, was it? It was always about you, I said quietly. I have no memory of that time, but now I understand. This leg, it's because of you, Mom. It wasn't because I hated you, she cried. It was an accident. The guilt made me harsh toward you, Mary. That's all. That horrible accident, it's haunted me. She broke down crying, acting like the victim. But I wasn't moved. I'm the one who should be crying, I said, my voice firm. You couldn't admit your mistake. Instead of apologizing, you just made everything worse. Me, a failure?
No, Mom.
You're the real failure. Don't ever show your face to me again. My mother's dramatic crying stopped, and she stared at me in shock. Grandpa chuckled softly. How does it feel to be called a failure by your own daughter? He asked, smiling. My mother shook with anger and sadness, but no words came out. Grandpa turned to me, his face kind.
Come on, Mary.
We're going to be late for our lunch reservation. Let's go enjoy that French cuisine. My family now is only my grandparents. After that incident, Evelyn somehow became a bit of a celebrity. Her social media suddenly gained more likes and comments. It turns out someone had recorded our argument and posted it online. The clip showed Evelyn and my mother berating me, and it sparked a flood of criticism against them. Evelyn must be thrilled she finally achieved her dream of fame. It was all a misunderstanding, Mary. Please explain, and my mother begged me. But the more they tried to argue online, the worse it got for them. Mary, you have to help us, they pleaded. There's nothing I can do, I replied with false humility. I'm just the trash you threw away, remember? No matter how hard they tried, nothing worked. Eventually, they gave up, switching from begging to screaming in frustration. I was done with them. I increased security at my company to make sure I wouldn't run into them again. At first, Evelyn, always so positive, tried to take advantage of the attention. She filled her social media with selfies, hoping to turn the critics into fans. But, as expected, it didn't work. The comment sections were full of harsh remarks, and even Evelyn's upbeat attitude couldn't handle it. After a few sad posts, Evelyn stopped updating altogether. I don't know what happened to Evelyn, or my mother after that. Oh, and my father? I almost forgot, he's just as irrelevant. This encounter with my parents made me even more grateful for my grandparents. Grandpa, Grandma, thank you, I said, feeling a bit shy as I expressed my gratitude. Grandma took my hand and smiled. It's normal for grandparents to love their grandchild. Thanks to them, I've been able to live a normal life. Children should always be spoiled by their grandparents. I'm already 27, you know, I said, laughing. To us, you will always be our baby, Mary. Age and social status don't matter. You can always be yourself with us, Grandma said warmly. And with them, I knew that was true.